Theology Part 3, Christian Forgiveness. Forgiveness is a teleological necessity for the good life. It's not just about forgiving yourself and letting go of a grudge. It's not just about forgiving others. And it's not just about justice. Because if we limit ourselves to the simple material, there is no such thing as adequate justice. There is never going to be enough forgiveness in the material realm to achieve a good society. An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. If you want to see an example of this, I highly recommend the series Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is set in the modern nihilist universe, and I'm talking about modern nihilism, not what Nietzsche wrote about, but it's set in a nihilist, godless, empty universe where there is no absolute truth. There's the relative truth of Skylar, there's the objective truth of Walt, but there's no absolute. There's no higher purpose. And so, in trying to achieve greatness, the best that Walt can achieve is greatness in this world. And the only way you can achieve greatness in this world is by crawling on top of everybody else around you. Teamwork becomes impossible. You become like the crabs in the bucket, pulling one another down. Because Walt cannot forgive. He can only have the simple material justice meted out to his opponents. He can do an eye for an eye. Except the problem with eye for an eye is that in the process of achieving that, you wind up hurting innocents, which he does. And so, in trying to get the eye for an eye, you wind up plucking out two eyes. And so the cycle of violence becomes more and more vicious. There is no end to it. It accelerates until you destroy all your other opponents. The ultimate end of all of this is going to be the destruction of all other human beings. The only way that Walt could succeed at his dream is by destroying every other person on the planet. With no higher purpose, no absolute truth in Walt's life, there is no end to the violence. It's ongoing. Eventually he's going to die, and then the person that killed him will start their own cycle of violence, which is exactly what we're seeing in the final season. This is why the concept of Christian forgiveness is necessary. An end to the violence, an end to the human sacrifice. This is why Christianity has the Christ figure. Throughout prehistory, cannibalism was rampant. Literally. Vengeance, blood feuds, all of this was going on, and only the sacrifice of a perfect man could be a good enough sacrifice to wash all this away. Only by sacrificing a man who had never sinned can we get rid of all those sins that we keep perpetuating. Only through that can we find forgiveness. You are never going to have justice in the material sense for all the wrongs done upon you. Nowadays, we create this high school institution perfectly designed to turn all into bullies and to turn all into victims. Can you really redress all the pain you suffered in high school? Because even if you were a victim, you victimized others as well. None of us are innocent in that environment. And to try and go back to that, to try and go to your high school reunion and punish all of those that were mean to you 10 years ago, it's an impossible task. It's a never-ending task. And it's never going to be equitable. We're just going to have more and more violence and pain and hatred and vengeance. Thus, forgiveness. That divine opportunity to move past the blood. To recognize that you can never adequately apologize for everything you've done to other people. And that other people will never be able to adequately apologize to you. The first step is contrition. You can't forgive somebody that hasn't apologized. If a serial killer murders your daughter and they're still saying, not guilty on the stand when all the evidence is against them, you can't forgive that person. You're not allowed to forgive that person. There does have to be logic and reason to it all. But if they do show contrition, if they do try and start fixing themselves, that's when forgiveness is offered. That's when forgiveness is necessary. Because if they've killed 20 people, they can't be killed 20 times. They can only be killed once. And justice might demand their life. But forgiveness is how we get to the next stage. It's how we move past all the abuse in our histories, in our personal histories, in our civilizational history, and we move forward. It's the opposite of what the grievance mongers want. The grievance mongers want to talk about crimes and injustices committed decades or centuries ago and still profit off of those. Forgiveness is about letting that go and trying to build a better tomorrow. Aurini out.